Okay, episode 117, incredibly, the Box Gathering podcast. I've got today unbeaten professional boxer, 9-0, Sonny Hardy, representing Essex in the house. How are you, mate?
I'm doing very well, thank you, mate. How are you doing?
Yeah, pretty good, pretty good. I think last time maybe I saw you in the flesh was when you were younger on the talent pathway.
Yeah, most likely, I think it was.
Yeah, probably one of the Billericay halfway workshops that we had down there. God, it must have been ages ago. You would have been probably around, I don't know, 16, 15?
It would have been around that time, yeah. There was a Billericay ones, there was Tamworth, Bridlington, wasn't there?
Yeah. Been a while, mate. Been a while. How old are you now, mate?
22.
22, you old git. You're knocking on now, aren't you?
I'm feeling it.
22, just hang the gloves up. I'm over the hill now. 22. Yeah, it's great to come on, mate. And just before we pressed record, just said I'd like to talk to you today, just generally about your journey through boxing, through your amateurs, into where you are now as a pro, the people that you're working with, all your aspirations and all those bits and pieces and everything else in between. Okay, mate. I'm interested. How did you get started in the sport? You know, how old were you? When was your first bout? Tell me all the details.
I started boxing at 8 years old, and I've not got any major story like what a lot of people do. A lot of people get into boxing because of mental health or due to bullying or because of a big fighting family. My dad done a bit of boxing, but I've got three brothers as well. We all got introduced into boxing, and I was the only one who really stuck with it. I tried other sports. I tried football. I think I got hold of the ball after about 2 years and fell over it, so that was that off the list. Tried karate, but there wasn't enough contact to really keep me motivated in the sport. And I went down Chalvdeon at 8 years old, over in 2011, I believe it was, and I fell in love with it.
And how many bouts did you have at Chalvdeon? 65. So nowadays as well, that's a lot, isn't it? Because, you know, you hear back in the day, you know, coaches older than me. I think I'm age-wise somewhere in the middle. Coaches that have had hundreds and hundreds of bouts. You hear that. But nowadays you don't hear people that have had 60, 70, 50, 60, 70 bouts. You know, they box and they had 20, 30 bouts and things like that. So you've got a lot of experience under your belt now, haven't you?
Yeah, that's it. It used to be, obviously, matchmaking used to be much easier back then. I remember even when I first started it, they was just trying to get it out of the game back then. But you used to, if you had one of your teammates on at a show, you used to take your kit with you anyway, and you used to go there as a spare. If you matched up weight with somebody else, that fight would go. They don't do things like that anymore, do they?
No, they don't. I'm sort of half and half of that one because you used to go as a spare, and half the time I think people used to think that they probably would box. You know, so they brought all the kit. I think it's probably likely that I would box, which is great. And if they didn't, they still jumped on the bandwagon and they're watching and cheering their mates on. But now that doesn't really sort of seem to happen much anymore, does it? For various reasons. I think sometimes as well, some people are just trying to freeload and say, oh, I'm coming as a spare. But hold on, there's 15 tickets here trying to get in without paying, trying to get into spare. But it's, so for better and for worse. Tell me about that amateur career then, mate. So you started at Billericay and excuse me. You started at Chalvdeon and ended at Chalvdeon. All those 67, did you say?
65.
65 bouts that you had there. Right, yeah. So tell me about your journey. What did you achieve in those amateurs?
All the way up to a senior, I'd always got used to hitting a post. I always boxed top elite level fighters, but I'd always get to the semi-finals. I used to get to the finals and just hit the post. I was boxing top opposition, the likes of, I think I had 3 or 4 fights against Patrice Malguzzi from Power Day Hooks, and he's flying now. I got him down to a 3-2 split decision at one point in the semi-finals, but I just couldn't get past him. He was my bogey man in the sport. I finally got over to the seniors, and all of a sudden something clicked. I think I found a little bit of man strength a bit early, and I boxed in the NABCs. I boxed 7 times, won all 7, and won 5 of them. I stopped 5 of them, so that was my first national title, and then I won some box cups and things like that, but nothing ever major. That was my first real sort of credential to go onto the resume, and then we turned professional.
That does happen a lot, though, doesn't it? So you can have boxers who are, real high achievers, but they didn't quite get over the line. As you say, hit the post purely because of the region you're in. You're Eastern Counties. Were you Eastern Counties or London?
I was Eastern Counties, yeah.
You'd often draw London, wouldn't you?
That's right, yeah.
Reasonably early on, so there is that as well. So you're going to have people that could possibly have won national titles all the time, but they draw someone who's equally as good, in the earlier rounds or in their own region, and that's it. But it's difficult. You're now 22, you said?
That's right, yeah.
22, professional, 8-0. Did you ever think when you first started at 8 years old that you'd be an 8-0 professional boxer?
I'm 9-0 now.
No, oh, excuse me, a 9-0. Look at me, I've done my
9-0,
homework here.
but
My
that one
homework
makes
here,
a
haven't I?
difference.
So I can edit that really easily.
I always, obviously, I feel like even as a kid, you always have ambitions. Like you're never typically looking up to another amateur boxer. It's always somebody like, when I was a kid, obviously everybody's inspiration was the likes of Floyd Mayweather and people like them. For me, it was Vasily Lomachenko, and I always wanted to fill them sort of boots, which was obviously the professional ranks. So I always had my eyes set on it. But highs and lows through the sports. There was times where I doubted myself. There was times where I was going to give up in the amateurs, especially close towards the end of my amateur career, and then all the stars seemed to align, and now it's looking really good.
What were those moments then? What were those kind of little wobbly moments where you thought, you know, I'm going to pack it in?
So I was meant to box in the Haringey Box Cup. I think it was 2021, 2022 maybe. I damaged the ligament really badly in my wrists in sparring, and I ended up being out of the sport for about a year. I think it worked out 10 months. I had my hand in a cast, and I ended up going university. I said, I'm never going to box again. I said, I might as well pack it in. I said, if I can't get past this injury, I said, I'm going to be playing catch up for the next X amount of years anyway. My old man came over to me one day and he's gone, oh, it's a shame. He said, the NABCs are coming up in 2 weeks. He said, I think you would have had a good chance at it. So out of stubbornness, we've taken the cast off, and we dropped an absurd amount of weight in a matter of a week, and we went on and won the championship. Something clicked after not training for 9 months, and then I was having to build my fitness up throughout the championships. Obviously, I started boxing on 2 weeks training, and I boxed and boxed and boxed, and I found myself getting fitter throughout. And yeah, we ended up getting a nod. And then I said to my old man, I said, listen, I said, I can't not do it now. I said, I've got to drop out of uni and give it a go. So that's what we've done.
Sorry, I don't know if you saw there. I sort of lost you for a couple of seconds, but no big deal. It's interesting though, isn't it? When you can prepare and leave no stone unturned for championships, and you've got them there in the calendar for the year, the whole season, and you can turn up and not perform, or you can do something like that where you're still ticking over, maybe not as fighting fit as you want, but it just takes that pressure away from you, and then you can just turn up and be you, as opposed to carrying all this pressure. And it sounds like maybe that was part of what happened there.
Yeah, 100%. I was going in there really with nothing to lose. I had it in my head. I was in university now. I was focused on a different sort of ambition and lifelong goal now. And it spun around on its head again, maybe for the better, who knows? And so far it's going blissfully.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're with Kevin Mitchell now, as I said to you before, and I'm particularly excited about that anyway, because he's very well respected, as a boxer, and everybody says this line. He's probably fed up with this line, one of the best boxers never to win a world title. But I just remember watching him, just thinking how classy he was, but tough as well. And I'm interested in yes, you're with Kevin Mitchell, but let's look at Kevin Mitchell as the coach. So tell us a little bit more about that then. So what sort of coach is he?
He's tough. He's really tough when regardless of the physicality. If you're training with Kev, you're going to be building mental strength and mindset around yourself, and that's solely down to him. He's not just a boxing coach and a boxing trainer. He's a bit of a mindset mentor as well in my eyes. So even when you have rough days, you'll get a lot of coaches that will say, "Oh, I have a day off." He'll say no. He said, "Get down the gym." He'll tailor the gym to your needs, and that's not just whether you've got an injury or whether you're a bit tired or you're aching. He knows what he's doing. He's been there. He's done it. He's worn the shirt. He's not just done the right things. He's done the wrong things as well, and that's what makes him such a great coach. He knows where he went wrong. He knows where he was flying with the sport. And that's where he's really going to benefit me in my professional career.
So he's bringing his experience from his professional days into what you're doing as well. So I find that really interesting. You mentioned he's almost like a mindset coach as well. Is this purely he gets this kind of mindset approach with you purely because of those mistakes that he feels he's made? Not just mistakes, but also the successes that he's had?
Yeah, it's not just because of that. It's where he's been in the sport for years and years and years anyway. He understands the emotions and the stress that goes behind it from a boxer's perspective. And I think he sort of lives that through me as well. He understands what I'm going through during a session, through a camp, through a weight cut. And he's always there assisting me and aiding me through the process as well. he's just brilliant. I've gone into sessions before, and I think a lot of boxers can always say it with confidence, even if they don't admit it. You go into a session sometimes, and the last thing you wanted to do that morning was leave your duvet. And I've turned up down the gym, and he's more than aware of the sort of mindset that you're in, and he won't directly tell you, right, you need to change your mindset, you need to sort yourself out, you need to crack on. He'll indirectly tailor the session to almost boost your morale and boost your confidence again, and then next thing you know, the session's triple as hard as what you was even intending to do, let alone prepare for.
I like that. It sounds like he's almost like kind of got that old school mentality where they can just have a look at you very quickly, give you a little look or a little sign, and okay, right, he gets it. But then he's going to go, actually, you're going to do, these are the standards anyway, and you're going to live up to the session. You're going to do your runs, your weights, you're going to do your groundwork, all that sort of stuff. So it sounds like he's got a bit of a new school mentality, but with that old school mentality as well.
Yeah, it's tough love. It's tough love.
Yeah, absolutely. So is this part of the kind of whole West Ham thing, whether that be boxing club, whether that be the football club? Is this whole sort of West Ham thing that's going on here? The West Ham mentality?
I think so. I think it's your stereotypical East London sort of mentality. He's got that old school rough and tough mentality. He's like, you've got to crack on with it. He said, you're in a camp. He says, he makes you think. If you've given that session a miss and that other lad who you're fighting in 5 weeks' time has already done that session and you haven't, he's one step ahead of you already. You're playing catch up at that point. Don't leave no stone unturned at all.
Okay, then. So that leads me on to this one. So what does make a good coach then? I mean, we briefly touched on this the other day on TikTok, didn't we? We had a quick back and forth, and I really liked your answer. So what does make a really good coach then?
I remember the answer that I gave you exactly. I like a lot of versatility in a coach. You see, there are some amateur clubs out there. I'm saying amateur because they have a bigger stable, but you'll hear that you're boxing a lad from that club and you're aware of what style they're going to be, even if you've not heard the kid's name. I think a great coach is somebody who's able to adapt to the ability and style of a boxer to best suit their needs. Some boxers, it's not that they're not confident, they've not got that physical or technical ability to be able to push forward for 3 rounds, and they might need to take a step back and start boxing. And as a coach, it's your responsibility, I believe, to be able to tailor make your boxer around that style that suits them, as opposed to saying your 5 stable mates can box on a back foot and throw check hooks for 3 rounds without getting caught. You need to do the exact same thing. But I think there's a lot more to be a good coach. I think, as I brought up previously with Kevin, I think you need to understand the psychology behind the sport as well. People say you need to have already laced a pair of gloves to be able to do it before. I've seen coaches who have never laced a pair of gloves before, and they've genuinely turned out as a good coach, whether it just be by luck. But I think you can gain knowledge from the sport from other aspects, and I think understanding the well-being of your boxer is a big essential in the sport. And if you don't do that, you're not going to be able to build that efficient relationship with your boxer, even long term especially. And I think that's another reason why you get lads not settling down to certain coaches or clubs.
So that lack of versatility in understanding the boxer, how they deliver sessions, how they read, as you mentioned earlier, when the boxer walks in the door, reading that situation and being flexible around it. So let me ask you this question then. As a boxer, is Sonny Hardy versatile?
I'm very versatile. I have to be versatile. I was never the most intelligent fighter in the amateurs. I always thought I was very good, but looking back on it now, I was below average. But for my style, I was competing at an above average level, I'd like to say. I think I was just a tough fighter. I was very strong-willed, but I never had the same sort of technical ability and aspects as what a lot of these other lads are doing. I never had an easy fight. In fact, some of the easier fights that I had, I lost because I was unprepared and I was underestimating them. But I think I'm very versatile. I can, if I need to be, I can take a step back. I can dance, box, score points and moves. But the Sonny Hardy in me likes to go forward and have a tear up.
As I saw in one of your last fight interviews, the plan was X, and I said, sod it, he's going to have Y, and I'll stick it on him for a little bit. But listen, it paid off.
Absolutely.
And that is versatility, isn't it? That is versatility. So tell me about your training regimen then. So what does and I know it must change from day to day, but what might a typical day look like for you in the gym with Kevin?
So a typical punching session with Kevin, we always start off with your average session will be, for instance, 4 rounds of shadow boxing. We'll be in and out with dumbbells or a weighted vest. Then after that, we do 8 to 10 rounds of pad work, and that will be 3-minute rounds or 4-minute rounds with 30-second rest. After that, we'll go to we'll probably do 3 rounds on bags, 2 rounds tap out, and then we'll go on to the core base exercises. We'll do 3 sets of 100 sit-ups. We'll do 3 sets of 60 press-ups. We'll do your pull-ups. We include a little bit of weight work into it. And if you think the session's about to end, you don't know Kevin, because Kevin will say, right, you've got this, this, and that. You finish your last bit of exercise, you think, right, I'm done for the day. He'll say, right, I want you to do this, this, and that now. So a typical session with me and Kevin will last around 2 hours long, and we'll do that twice a day.
So the phrase stone unturned's come up a couple of times, isn't it? So we're definitely ticking that physical box, aren't we?
Yeah.
But I also think if you're ticking the physical box, it becomes a little bit easier to tick the mental box as well, because a lot of mentality comes from understanding that you've got the engine, the capabilities to do it. People, when they feel tired, I think that's when their actual mentality drops, because they don't have that capacity to do that.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
I think that becomes really important too. So talking about mentality then, so how do you actually prepare for big fights? What's your sort of mental approach to big fights coming up? How do you go about it?
I think you almost answered it yourself right then. I think to be able to really mentally prepare for a fight, it's solely down to the camp that you've just been through. I feel like if you've made sure that you've turned up to every session, put in 100% every session, sparred at the best of your capability, even you're going to have off days in sparring. You're going to spar people who are going to punch you around the ring. Sometimes it happens, and that's all part of learning. You're not going to get in there every time and win every spar, because that's not what sparring's about. But if you can truly say that you couldn't have trained any harder or prepared any better for that upcoming fight, there's no way on earth that you can be any more mentally prepared.
I agree, mate. I don't think we need to separate the physical and the mental. I think they complement each other massively. I mean, I was, as an amateur, I wasn't anything to your standard, but I was always fit. And I only remember one fight thinking I'd not prepared how much I should have been, and my mentality was all out the window, and I lost purely just because I got walked down in the end, because I sort of convinced myself that I wasn't fit. But I probably was decent enough. So yeah, those two things that should always be linked, I think. So what is the most sort of challenging moment in your boxing career? How did you overcome it, mate?
I want to try disregard the things like weight cuts and things like that, because they're tough, but I think every boxer's got to go through that. Like, I've hit a new weight now. As an amateur, I boxed in the seniors. Between my championships, I won at 63.5, but I remember my first senior fight was at 68 kg. And my most recent professional fight, I weighed in at super-featherweight, and I weighed in at championship weight, which was 58.9. So nearly 10 kilos difference. I'm making it a lot more comfortable than what other boxers would presume, to be fair. But I think the biggest challenge in the professionals was genuinely just the transition. I always thought that I was a hard grafter in the amateurs. I always thought I put the time and effort in, and looking back on it now, I didn't, and I would have and could have won a lot more than what I did. I used to do a session on Tuesday and Thursday for an hour and a half, and I used to run twice a week. And even then, I used to try cut a corner when a coach wasn't looking. I'd be on a bag and start tapping away, but I had it in my head that I was a lot better than what I was, and that's a God honest truth. Now transitioning into the professional game, and you're training twice a day, 4 hours a day training. Yeah, that was the toughest part. And I think if it wasn't for having such a good coach like Kevin, and having such good people around me, like my family, like my old man, for instance, I think that would have been a big struggle.
And what about injuries, mate? Have injuries been a big part of, amateur or pro, managing injuries or anything, any kind of sort of setbacks that way?
In the professionals, I think the only real injuries you get is with your hands. But for me, it's mainly just a build up of scar tissue and things like that. And as soon as you start your next camp, they swell up every session. The scar tissue almost massages itself out during a session. So the more you punch and the more it hurts, the better it almost gets. In regards to longevity and things like that, I've not really picked up any bad injuries. The worst one I had was before my fight last year in July. I got caught with a shot in sparring, and I initially thought I broke my nose, and I thought this doesn't feel right. A broken nose goes cold and numb, and I can usually crack on. But every shot was almost ringing bells, and I went home and I self-assessed it later on, and I thought I had a septal hematoma, which is a blood clot in your nose. And I went to the hospital and they found out it was true. And they were saying there's such a big risk of fighting with it, because once you drain it, there's a chance that it comes back. If you leave it, you can get brain infection because of the blood rots. You can end up with saddle nose. There's loads of different things with it, and I had to have it drained 4 times in the 2 weeks leading up to my fight at the O2. And they was advising me not to fight. Luckily enough, I managed to get a fight done. I stopped the lad in the second round. It come back up again. I had it drained, and touch wood, it's been clear since though. But that's the worst injury I'd say I've had.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those sports where you feel like, that you can go lots of different sports and just sort of hope you're not going to get injuries. But in this sport, you're going to get injuries. So I think that mentality as well, how you deal with something like your nose is going to get punched again, right? You're going to get hit in that, and that's not just in competition, that's more in sparring. You're going to get in that nose again. So it's kind of managing those things. You hear stuff about like how Calzaghe used to look after his hands and all that, and manage his training load around that. So yeah, I think there's a lot of things to consider there. So let's talk about dig more into your pro career, Henning. So what sort of pros do you look up to at the moment? Maybe domestically, who are the ones that you look up to? Do you know what? They're brilliant. I really like them. I like how they box.
He's not at a domestic level, but I think the biggest, not even inspiration for me, but the person I look up to the most and I'd aspire to be like would be Joe Cordina. I've known him since I turned professional. I've done loads and loads of rounds with him. I went to Saudi Arabia with him, but he's your most well-rounded world champion in any division, in my opinion. He's built his profile up of being humble. He's never once said a bad word about an opponent. He's kept himself to himself, and he's let his performance and his technique and ability do the talking, and that's what's benefited him. And I think that's what I respect a lot.
Classy, isn't he? Definitely classy with great fundamentals too. And he's a handsome bugger as well, isn't he? So he's got the whole sort of he's got the whole sort of package there, isn't he?
Yeah, that's it.
So let me just touch a bit more. I'm just going to go back for a second. I'll come back into your pro career in a minute. So coaching itself. So what's the best bit of coaching that you think you've ever seen? It might be that you've experienced or something that you've seen either in the pro ranks or the amateurs. Something you've gone, that's good coaching.
That's quite a hard one. I've seen so much good coaching. Like,
go on, mate. People to the punch, go on.
I've seen... Even down to being, I'll give an example from my amateur club. We had a lad come down from one of the obviously I won't name the lad or the clubs. We had a lad come down from one of like the most well recognised clubs in the country, and he come down with he was trying to imitate your typical GB style, on your toes, throwing check hooks, scoring and moving and not getting hit. And he just wasn't working for him, but he was getting really frustrated with himself because it looked like that's all he'd been pushed to be taught. And it took a little while. It took a few months, but we had him just settling down a little bit because he had a below par record for what you could see his ability was. And we settled down with this lad, and we said, and my old man, said, you need to slow it down. You need to go back to scratch, start from the beginning, and take it one step at a time. And just something as simple as that, I think, is great coaching. Because he could see that the style wasn't going to work for the lads. No matter how much the lad tried, you could see he was getting flustered, frustrated, and it was almost demoralising for the kid. It looked like he didn't want to be there anymore because it wasn't working. And just making small adaptations to his style. We didn't change him completely, but we just gave him extra tools for his toolbox that he could pull out if and when he wanted to. And that allowed him to progress. And I think he ended up winning 7 or 8 fights on the bounce, which was brilliant for him. And I'm trying to think of one in regards to my pro career. Obviously, the only real coaches I've been around in the pros and had the privilege to watch would be Tony Sims and Kevin Mitchell. And I wouldn't be able to pick out one specific scenario where I could say, wow, that's good, because every bit of training they do is elite level training, and it's world class. You might have to come back to me on that one.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's difficult to pinpoint, isn't it? But the names that you're mentioning here, like with Kev, with Sims, they just have this ability to almost convey what they want in a very simple, short way. Yeah, I get you. They'll say something. Yeah, okay, I get what you mean. Rather sitting there and then talking to you about angles or something like that and start bringing out trigonometry and things like that. Right, your foot needs to be at 45 degrees. You need to do it. They'll get a point across what needs to happen in a very short, succinct way. And I think that's what makes really, really good coaches. And some reason, there's millions of them, not millions of them, but there's a good abundance of them around London, and these people just have that sort of connection. It's all about that kind of connection and how you get that information across. So it's good to hear that so what I've heard from what you're saying is that you're kind of getting that. You're getting these people who just kind of get it. Bang, this is what we need to do. Let's not bloody read War and Peace to them, to get that information across. Here's another question for you then, mate. 10 years' time, Sounds like an interview question, doesn't it? But what was it you would like to read in the paper 10 years' time? Sonny Hardy's, he's 32, could still be going at 32. You know, it's quite young nowadays, isn't it? I suppose 32 for a boxer. But what would you like to read about yourself in 10 years' time, mate?
In 10 years' time, I'd like to be out of the sport in 10 years' time.
Okay.
I'd like to be settled down, and I'd like to be able to see in the paper that I've opened up my own gym and I'm giving back to the community. I want to be able to run, whether it's an amateur or a pro, or maybe both considerable. But I want to continue to pursue the sport of boxing throughout my life without getting punched in the face at that point. And that's what that's what I'd like to see.
Brilliant. So that community aspect, the giving back bit, which boxing does better than any sport, doesn't it? Somehow we get involved and give back, whether it be coaching or community stuff. What about in the performance realm, though, mate? What do you want to achieve as a professional boxer?
I think if your aspiration as a professional fighter isn't to win a world title, you're in the wrong sport. If you're in the professional sport for money, you're in the wrong sport. I truly believe that I'd like to get beyond the domestic level of boxing by that stage, and I'd like to have at least competed for a world title. And I know I'm not quite there in regards to the standard of boxing as of yet, but I believe that with the right training and the right people around me, I believe I can well and truly get there by then. And I think I'll get there by then. So I want to be reading in the paper by then that I've got some belts around my waist.
So how do you do that? What's your kind of short-term goals?
So within the next year, I think I've almost done my sort of apprenticeship at the start of the pro. I wouldn't call myself a raw novice in the professional ranks anymore. My last fight was against an undefeated prospect, and I think I've earned the right and earned the opportunity to be able to compete for a domestic level title, for instance, a Southern Area title, then progress on to the English and British. And I think I can complete at least 2 of them titles within the next year.
Okay. So do you sit down with management and go, right, these are my short-term goals. This is where we want to be in 6 months. This is where we want to go. Because, you know, it does come a lot more into the kind of business side of the sport, doesn't it? So, you know, as a commodity, where does Sonny Hardy want to be? So what might those conversations look like?
When I initially started, I remember, again, as a professional boxer, I think you're lying. I think as a professional fighter, you're lying if you disagree. We want everything and we want it now. I think that's a typical boxer's mentality. So I remember when I first started, I sat down with Kevin. I said, I want to fight for a Southern Area title. By my 5th fight, he said, you're not ready. I said, really? I questioned it. He said, you've got the ability. He said, but why would I put you out there for a 50-50 chance where I can put you out there when you're more than ready and I know you're going to win that title? He said, I want to be confident in you as you are in yourself. And I sat down and I listened to that. I said, yeah, you're right. And we had it on the radar. Kevin initially said 15 fights, but the progression's been very, very noticeable over the past year or two. And I think we're going to see it a lot earlier, in my opinion. So, yeah, we sit down, we plan out not necessarily the long-term goals. As you said, it's all small milestones, small stepping stones throughout the journey. We don't look too far into the future. We like looking into the present, like sort of present time, and building our way up piece by piece.
Okay. Yeah, that does make sense, because I think we can get lost in the whole, you know, I want to be world champion in 2 years, 3 years, that sort of thing. Okay, well, how do we get there? What are the stepping stones? You know, and also what are the kind of, I like to call it a pre-mortem, you know, what could be the problems? What are the issues that could happen? And how would I sort of jump those hurdles if they do happen? So I always like to look at it that way as well. Here's a nice question for you, mate. So your dad, Dave, and Kevin Mitchell, are they similar, different in terms of how they coach and work?
I think they're quite different. I think my old man Dave, I think he's always there for the boxer's best interests, but he's just that little bit more laid back than Kevin. He likes to give you a bit of time to breathe. With Kevin, there's no breathing. You're doing it and you're doing it now. But being an amateur coach as well, he likes to come training with me a lot, just to analyse. He just sits by the sidelines and watches. And he's learning himself still. He's learning a lot from watching Kevin. And I can see him implementing that in his coaching ability in the amateurs. And I'm not saying that he's trying to teach boxers to sit down on their shots at 11 years old and try and knock other lads out. But I think a lot of it, going all the way back to the psychological aspect again, I've seen him being able to motivate the boxers in Chalvdeon a lot more easily. He always used to be able to do it regardless, but he's finding new ways of communicating and things like that. And I think there's a lot of educating behind that.
Okay. So I'm also interested in this then. So do you see how you compete and how you box now? Do you see both of them in you? Do you see a bit of Kevin Mitchell and how you box in terms of how he boxed, and do you see a lot of influences from your dad? So can you tell that you are a product of Kevin Mitchell and your dad?
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. My old man, he used to teach me. We used to do a lot of single shots and two-shot combinations. It was all really sticking to the basics. Not saying that Kevin isn't. It's all basics, but it's high volume of basic work. And Kevin, as a fighter, when he was fighting, he used to, even when you could tell that it may not have been necessary, he used to like sitting in the pocket and getting to work and making his opponent uncomfortable. And I feel like I've got a lot of that in me. And then even going back to my last fight, it wasn't an accumulation of punches necessarily that resulted in the fight ending. It was a single shot. And yeah, there's little aspects like that go from both between my old man and Kevin.
So, obviously Kevin Mitchell, he was a great ticket seller. He was just a bit of a throwback in terms of how he boxed. He could fight, but he was also technically brilliant, tough as old boots. So that it was always great to watch. So in terms of you as a pro as well, how do you find things like ticket selling?
Oh, it's horrible. It's horrible. It's one of the hardest parts about a training camp.
Yeah.
Obviously, the amount of tickets you sell determine your wage at the end of the fight. And even when you sell a lot after the expenses and after the cuts, taxes, etc., you're not going to earn a huge deal of money for what has just been a 2 to 3 month camp. I've got a relatively big fan base as well. I wouldn't call it a fan base. I've got a lot of supporters. I've got a lot of people supporting me, rooting for me, and believing in me, I'd say. And yeah, them people I'm forever grateful for. And it's not easy fighting 4 or 5 times a year and expecting somebody to reach into their pocket every time to pay to come support you. They're still supporting you regardless of whether they're there or not. And it's not easy to get people to fork money out like that all the time. It's unrealistic to ask. So you have some fights where you might do tickets, and the next fight you're struggling to scrape 100 tickets. At the end of the day, boxing I see as a long-term investment. There may not be a lot of financial structure in it at the minute, but obviously once I continue to progress and the bigger fights start to come and the bigger what then will become a fan base starts to come in, that's when the finances start to become more apparent.
And if you've got an amateur now who's about to turn over pro, or maybe someone who's doing well in, let's just say, they're a junior or a youth, and you go, do you know what? They're going to go pro because they're decent. What sort of advice would you give along those lines? Because it ain't all sunshine and rainbows, as Rocky says, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. I don't believe it's as lonely of a sport as what people make it out to be. I truly believe that just the relationship between you and your trainer, let alone the rest of your stable mates, it can become a much more enjoyable sport. You do lose some of that social aspect throughout your outside life, outside of the ring, but that's a sacrifice that you need to be willing to make to secure your future as a professional fighter. I'd say don't go into it with any major expectations straight off the bat. You might not sign to a promoter immediately, and then if that's the case, you're having to build your way up on small hall shows, which I'm doing, and I am proving myself from scratch. I tell them if they was in it for the money, not to do it. Because a very, very small amount of boxers will make a decent living out of this sport. Fight for the legacy, and if you can pay your house off for it, then that's the icing on the cake at the end of the day. Because the God honest truth is that there isn't a lot of finance in the sport. A lot of the fighters, I believe, are underpaid, and that's not necessarily down to the promoters. Some people can't sell tickets, and that's just the thing. But yeah, it's not an easy sport. It's not an easy sport, but if you love the sport and you want to box because you love boxing, then give it a go.
That's great advice, mate. And what's the best kind of advice that you've ever had? That little nugget that you've got, that still lives with me now. That guides me.
On
That's
top
a tough
of
one, isn't it? I can see you accessing your brain right now on that one.
It is. It is. I'm trying to think of Kevin's advice, and a lot of the time it's shut up and get on with it. But on top of the advice that I said just now, I've received that plenty of times, and I wish I did hear it earlier, because I feel like I threw myself into the deep end, expecting to just be able to float, and it wasn't as easy as that.
I like the fact that the advice that you've given to the young prospects who want to turn over there is that it's like a time thing, isn't it? I wish I knew that earlier.
Yeah.
I wish I'd heard that earlier. What better person to get it from than someone who's actually turned over yourself? How long have you been pro now for? I mean, you're 9 bouts.
Just over 2 years, yeah.
2 years. Okay. So like you say, you've kind of done your apprenticeship as a novice boxer, and you're moving into a different area now. But I think some of these kids should be popping up to the gym and watching you train and asking you questions, and especially about things like ticket selling and how do I go about this? You know, do pro boxers network very well?
A lot of them do. A lot of them do. But I think that's another bit of advice that comes into that in regards to the networking. People, when they are very naturally good, they get a lot of opportunities very early on, and they can lose themselves in them opportunities. And that's the other bit of advice that I've been told, and I live by all the time, is don't forget your roots. Give back to your amateur boxing clubs and inspire the younger generation to want to pursue the same footsteps as what you're walking in. Yeah, in regards to networking, you need to, especially when you're doing ticket deals and things like that, you need to get yourself out there. You need to be able to publicise yourself. You need to do interviews. You need to give back. And even outside of doing that for ticket purposes, it's nice to give back. It's nice to go back down to my amateur boxing club and give back to the boxers there and see them progress.
Yeah, here, mate. Here. So when you're boxing next?
September the 27th.
Okay, got an opponent lined up?
Not just yet. We're still looking for opponents. There's a lot of politics involved in professional boxing now. It's not necessarily the same sport as it used to be, but it's a bit harder to find fights nowadays. But I'm just waiting and trusting that one will come.
Keep ticking over. Keep working. All good things come,
Absolutely.
mate. Listen, mate, have you got any shout outs or anything like that you'd like to say before we sign off today, mate?
Yeah, of course. I want to give a big shout out to everyone who continues to support me and my journey, and I'm grateful to be able to take everybody on the journey with me as well. I want to give a shout out to my sponsors: Sight King, Pagan Construction Limited, Reach Group's Community Project, Empire Pro Tape, and Nature Wolf CBD. Without sponsors, as a professional, you won't be able to get too far in a sport. So I'm forever grateful for that, to be able to help me continue the journey.
Absolutely, mate. And these people are so important in pro careers, aren't they? Without that kind of kickstart, that constant help behind you, and these things don't happen, your career doesn't move forward. Sonny, it's been great catching up again. Been great listening to you. Looking forward to following your career, mate. Good luck in September. Stick it all over him. And I'm sure all the listeners and the box gathering are right behind you, mate.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, mate. It's been emotional. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, mate. Cheers.
Take care, mate. All the best.